Cool.
Welcome to On VJ's playlist, everybody. And my guest today is somebody whose evolution as an artist and a performer has been a very, very fulfilling and personal experience, to say the least. Join me in welcoming the lovely Frizzell D'Souza, all the way from Bangalore. Hello, lady. How are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me on. I'm good. How have you been doing?
Well, so far so good. I mean, that's the best I can say. But congratulations, Frizzell. The world is once again all enthralled by your wonderful vocals with The Hills Know of You. This brilliant EP that you have brought to us, somewhere in the middle of October, and now here we are sitting to discuss all about it. So before we get, further into discussing the whole EP and how you got into the process of making it, let's begin with who you are as a person and how you pick towards music. Of course, since you come from a very Catholic background, I can assume that music would have been a huge part of your upbringing, because I also understand from an interview that your father is in the Navy. So every time he came back home in Mangalore, he always got CDs and cassettes of various artists from across the world from his travels. Um, would you want to tell us more about that?
I was brought up in a Catholic household, in a Catholic school, so music was always a part of my, everyday life. Um, but yeah, I think a major part of it, I do give credit to my dad mostly because he was the one who introduced music in our family, largely because he worked as a doctor in the Navy and he was exposed to a lot of music, national and international music, and he would bring home a lot of these cassettes and CDs, which he collected and kept in boxes, and I rediscovered very recently, and I've just sort of cherished all of them. So I do credit a lot of my influence to his exposure to music. So I think that's where it all began, if I had to put a line to it.
But then I suppose also while you were singing, as part of school choirs and other singing competitions at school, I think you also picked up violin lessons as a child, and eventually you also started learning the guitar, the piano, and the ukulele. Is that correct?
I was enrolled in piano lessons when she was in school, and I was enrolled in violin lessons, and we both gave grades at Trinity College in London. But I think I had an inclination towards the guitar because it always looked like a cool instrument. It looked like the kind of instrument that cool kids play. And so I was always very attracted to it. And somewhere in my fifth or sixth grade, I told my parents, I am going to learn the guitar. I don't care at this point. And mom said, you know what, you're not going to let go of the violin. Learn the violin, learn the guitar, alongside. So I went to a couple of classes, and the classes did turn out great, but then I started learning online. And I was also curious about the piano, so I got my sister to teach me like basic chords and whatnot. So that's how I picked that up, and I started playing it by ear. Then picked up the ukulele because why not, So that's just where my whole instrument journey began. And now I think I find the most amount of ease and comfort in the guitar. So that's become my instrument to write anything on.
Well, for those wondering who is that in the background, it's Frizzell's four-legged friend Milo, who she was very sweet enough to introduce me to before we began filming this interview. But moving forward, Frizzell, who are some of your early influences? Who are some of the musicians and the artists you listened to when you were, at an impressionable age?
I think I had a whole period of time when I was just listening to Ed Sheeran, especially during and a little before his Divide album released.
Yeah.
So I think I draw a lot of inspiration from him, not just because he's a brilliant singer-songwriter and now he's transitioned to a whole different genre altogether, but just the fact that he started out pretty much as a non-trained musician. He started out busking on the streets, and he just like wrote a lot of shitty songs along the way as well before he made his big break. And so he admits that, and it's really nice to see this sort of rawness and this humanness in artists, when they don't put on a facade and they don't say that we're celebrities and we're superstars, and you see that human element behind them, behind where they began. So I always felt like I connected with that. So Ed Sheeran definitely was a huge part of, my origins. But if I had to talk about artists that I like, influences, it would go back to, the kind of music that my parents grew up listening to. So a lot of Frank Sinatra, Michael Jackson, Bee Gees. So just that whole era of music, the retro classics. And yeah, lately I've also loved listening to Hosier, whose songwriting
Yeah.
I admire so much. He's got brilliant songwriting, just absolutely brilliant metaphors and figures of speech in whatever he writes. So yeah, that's me.
I mean, I can just say that, if one who follows you on Instagram actually sits patiently and listens to all the covers that you've attempted, clearly, I think your music taste reflects in, the kind of songs that you have attempted, from a Billie Eilish to a John Denver. You've done every one of them. Um, but of course, Frizzell, I think it's when you started pursuing architecture, I think in 2017 or 2018, when you moved from Mangalore to Bangalore, is when, you started writing your first set of songs. Songwriting came to you while you were studying architecture. Do you want to tell us more about that?
Yeah, so I started my YouTube channel when I was in architecture. It started more of as a hobby, because sometimes you get so tired and frustrated of doing the same thing over and over again. So I guess picking up my guitar and playing these songs, making covers was my way of taking a break. And I would just spend sort of 20, 30 minutes playing some songs. I would entertain my roommates. We would all sing together and then get back to work. So eventually, I made a decision. I said, I'm going to put up two covers every month. And that's how my YouTube channel grew. So
Hmm.
somewhere in the lockdown, when I was at home, I was talking to a friend who was also an artist, a singer-songwriter in Bangalore. And he said, Frizzell, you can try stepping up, try writing your own songs. And so I was at home while giving my sixth semester exams, I think. I was just writing whatever came to mind, like literally whatever. I had no intentions of putting out anything. So that's when I wrote this song called New, which
Yeah.
eventually became the first song I released. So I'm also very grateful to a lot of these celebrities, singer-songwriters like Raghav Miatal and Esansa from Shankar Ehsan Loy, who went live on Instagram pretty much every night, took artists like me on their Instagram lives, got us to play our songs. So we were exposed to a whole different side to the Indian independent music industry. So that's definitely a big chunk of where I started. Um, yeah, architecture just sort of happened alongside everything else.
But was there any particular set of challenges, Frizzell, that you faced? Because of course, it's not easy as a young student where you are also dabbling studies and you're also dabbling your musical aspirations also. So how were you able to maintain the equilibrium between both?
So, I mean, for sure, a course like architecture had always been very demanding, be it me doing music or not, it always was. But ever since I started releasing songs, I always had the support from this one artist collective back then called the Urban Weaver.
Yeah.
So when I released my first couple of songs, they were basically an artist collective that helped me out with pretty much every aspect of it, be it production or be it the visuals. I always had help. And so, that helped me out a whole lot because I didn't have to put in 100% of my time into figuring out everything from scratch. I also had a lot of help from, artists I met on Instagram who helped me out with how to release my songs, with just like how to write emails to people like journalists like you. So I had a lot of help along the way, and it wasn't a one-person job for sure. So yeah, I also give a lot of credit to Arvind, who is in my team, who also helps me with pretty much every aspect of whatever I'm doing in music, so that I'm able to also pursue my design aspirations, which have always been alongside music. So for sure, I credit my team for giving me all the help in the world.
Rightfully so, because you were pretty much a lockdown discovery for many people who, I think I've always maintained that the lockdown somewhere Of course, it may have taken away the means of income and the means of discovery for artists in general, but it also gave a lot of people the opportunity, the time, and the space to really sit down and listen to a lot of young and upcoming artists at leisure. And that's how somebody like you got discovered in 2020 when you started with New. When you followed it up with Drown Away, there was Foolish Once Again. Foolish Once Again had released, I think, just a little after the second wave of COVID had hit us. And that came
Mhm.
as such a beautiful respite in between, because there was so much of gloom and so much of melancholy all around during the second wave of COVID. And then, of course, there was Fall towards the end of 2021, which beautifully encapsulates the kind of process that you are bringing to the table. And in between, you've also done two collaborations, one being Jaded and one being Illetis with Tom Fernandez and with Pratik Tushar. And now, finally, you have made your big debut with The Hills Know of You. As as a listener, right now, I was just listening to the entire EP at length, and my, I can only say, Frizzell, for someone who has been following your journey right from the very beginning, right from New. I think I can proudly say that you've clearly evolved over time. So when you started with New, there was that rawness, there was that sense of someone who was confident and very much of her abilities. But with the EP is where I think now this is your moment of arrival in a way. So firstly, congratulations for the tremendous work that you have done on the EP. Quickly, if we have to just get to you know dissect each and every track from the EP. My personal favorite would be, Busy Loving You. I mean, of course, I have reviewed the first two tracks that you released just as easily, and the titular track that is The Hills Know of You. But I was just listening to Busy Loving You, and I'm like, wow. I mean, I think I'll just leave it to you. Can you just quickly take us through how did you conceptualize each and every song?
So first of all, thank you for such kind words, such sweet words. The CP has been happening over a really long period of time, meaning that these songs were written very unrelated to each other over a long period, even from the start of 2020. Busy Loving You is something that I wrote during 2021. It's a very simple, very classic love song. Uh, you could probably tell from the lyrics, it's a very straightforward, simple love song.
Very exactly.
I had and I think that's what I love about it the most. For all the kind of music that I've covered and taken inspiration from, it's always the simplest and the sweetest songs that you hold close to your heart. At least that's what it's been like for me. And I think that's where Busy Loving You came from. It's a very simple acoustic guitar and vocals track, and I tried sticking to the idea of love just very simply. But if I were to talk about the EP as a whole, it's it simply comes down to the age-old tale of love, the classic love story. But I think what is different in the way that I've narrated each and every one of these songs is the fact that the same love story can be told in so many different ways because every single person, be it you or me or any other person on this planet, we perceive love or we experience it in many different ways.
Yeah.
Be it heartbreak, be it falling in love with someone, falling out of love with them, hundreds of different ways you can do it. And I think that's something that I've tried to narrate through the EP. So each and every one of the songs, when I put them in that particular order, it just sort of fell into this story, and that's what I love most about it. The title track, which is "The Hills Know of You," is essentially a song on heartbreak, but it's a story about a friend who was going through a breakup during the pandemic, and it was quite a lonely time for most people, but especially for someone going through a breakup, all the more, heartbreaking. And he told me about this one incident where he sort of just took off on his bike and went to somewhere in Leh Ladakh.
Mm.
And there were a lot of these emotions pent up. And he said, you know what, I just felt like screaming her name out loud. And I was lost in these mountain ranges somewhere in between. And I found out through a journal entry that he shared with me later. But I found it so poetic how just nature can be such a space of solace for anyone going through anything. How you can sort of share your secrets and, you can feel better. It's a way of healing. And so the Hills Know of You is simply about how nature can be a space of comfort and healing for you whenever you're going through a bad time. Maybe tomorrow, a song on picking yourself up from possibly the lowest points of your time. It's something that comes from a dark space for me. I'd written it a little before Foolish once again released, and again, it was all during the pandemic. Wasn't going through the best time in my life, and I think this was one of the fastest songs I ever wrote because it was like writing a journal entry for me. Um, and then there is Just as Easily, which is the first song I put out. This also comes from a story of a friend who sort of confided in me, and he told me, you know what, the first three songs sound pretty much like the life I've lived so far. And he went on to tell me about, this girl that he sort of had a crush on during high school, and how he's never been able to get over her. And he says, Frizzell, you know what? Like every other person that I've met in my office or met in college, every other person that I liked, I knew it was a different version of the same girl. Like I've never been able to move past this one person. And that's when I knew. I was like, hey, you know what? I'm stealing your story and putting it in the EP. And that's how Justice Easily came about. And there's also the interlude in between, which was a very
Yeah,
unexpected track. But it's something of bridging, the phases between Maybe Tomorrow and Just as Easily. It's the interlude is about a time when you feel like you need everything to stop, you need to just stand still, and you need that time for healing yourself, right? So that's what we try to do. We put like a little clock sample over there to indicate time, and there are these three guitar strums at the end, which I wanted to sound like a church bell because for me, although I have my, inhibitions about going to church and whatever, sitting in a church or a chapel just gives me so much comfort. It's very inexplicable. So I wanted to introduce the church bell over there because it's the most peaceful sound to me. So that's why the interlude came in. So if I have to sum up, The Hills Know of You is a very age-old tale of love, but it's just the way that you can explain this story in 1,000 different ways.
absolutely, Frizzell. Because also, do you want to quickly, give us a little gist about people who have guested on the EP with you? I believe there is Varun Murli of Swaratma fame. Do you want to quickly talk about the different collaborators who come in, who put in their best foot forward in helping you get this EP out there?
Yes, for sure. First and foremost would definitely be the producer himself, Varun Murli. He's been such a gift throughout the production and writing of this entire EP. It's been so much fun to be in his studio. It's called the Red Music Box Studio in
Box,
Bangalore.
yeah.
So he's been reaching out to a lot of young indie singer-songwriters, and he's been helping out so many people. It's been amazing working with him. So he produced, mixed, and mastered the entire EP. He also performed some of the guitars for me in some of the tracks, like Busy Loving You and Maybe Tomorrow. I also had Shravan Sridhar play the strings in Just as Easily. He is a fantastic violinist, and I knew there had to be like this interlude which needed an instrumental
Yeah.
in Just as Easily, and that's when I thought Shravan Sridhar can do a great job on this. And so we had him perform strings over there. He did like a great string section over there. I also, so Just as Easily was sort of composed in collaboration with um, this architect that I was working with during my internship. So his name is Arpit Matthew. And
Wow.
I was writing this pretty much while getting the other songs recorded. I was still writing Just as Easily because I couldn't figure out what the song was about. It was a very last minute composition, if I had to put it that way. So I was just jamming with him, and he said, "You know what? I think you can add another layer of guitars over this. So he sort of helped me compose the entire track. So we were just sitting in the office and composing this song for my EP. So yeah, that's where Arpit came in. So for the visuals, we have Prithviraj Shastri, who is a Mangalorean who did everything for the visuals from start to end. All of the lyric videos you see, the artwork, all done by him. I had help from Smaran Alva, who is a digital artist, an NFT artist right now.
Yeah.
He gave me a lot of help. And of course, the urban weaver, the Arvind Shenoy, who has done everything for me from start to end. I can't put, a label on what he's done and what he's not done, but he's just been there throughout every step of the way. That's my team.
Well, since you spoke of Varun Murali's Viratma fame, Frizzell, I think once things sort of gained a sense of normalcy, once live music resumed, at the start of this year. Since then, you have had the opportunity of opening for some really wonderful acts. Whether it was Swaratma, whether it was Parvas, Kayan very recently, Tava Chake also very recently. I'm sure you must have had the opportunity to interact with each one of them and with many people, at the backstage. So, any particular insights from each interaction that you remember and you feel like, wow, that's something I would want to inculcate in me as a live performer going forward?
Um, I mean, I think for starters, having the opportunity to itself perform at live venues, because I started out as an artist who grew online during the pandemic. And so opening for acts like Parvaz and Tava Chaki, Kayan as well, um, it's been, I feel like it's been such a step up because not only did I have the exposure to meet these artists, but also perform for their audiences. So not only do I get feedback from the audience, but I also get to meet these artists later and see what they're like and see what their feedback is. Um, I think for me, the most starstruck interaction was with Tabachaki because even before I started writing songs, it was his music that I started listening to, from the independent music scene.
Yeah.
He was such a kind person. When I met him after stage, he complimented my music. And it was just a very, very lovely interaction. Parvaz as well, I remember the entire team was sort of sitting in the artist lounge after the show, and we were all just talking. And Khalid and Bharat are such sweet people. They definitely offered to help me with my music journey forward, and that's when I realized, like not everyone puts up a facade and pretends they're ahead of you or behind you. Everyone's just trying to help each other out in the scene.
Yeah.
That may not always be the case, but at least with the interactions that I've had, I've gotten to see that everyone's such a nice human on the inside. So it's been great to be on the receiving end of a lot of support. So I've had a lovely time opening for such big artists.
Of course, artists generally, for them, feedback is very important. Good, bad, and the ugly. It's all a part of evolution. It's all a part of evolving, and of course, even for us also, as journalists in our field, sometimes it is important that somebody gives us constructive views about the work we do. Uh, but sometimes, what, in the process of being constructive, in the process of being objective, some people can be really downright nasty or, downright rude. Has there been any such, uh, has there been a piece of criticism of Frizzell that has kind of really, uh, like you can see where that person is coming from? It could be objective or not, but the way it was put across was really mean and very absurd.
Um, Luckily, I mean, fortunately for me, I don't think that I've received any sort of criticism that has been so harsh and so rude.
Hmm.
But there have been a lot of instances where I can tell the person's coming from a good place, but the way
Yeah.
that they're trying to put forward their criticism isn't really helping me. So there was one person that came back to me after a show and said, you know what, you do have some good songs, but maybe stop writing about the same thing over and over again. I was like, you probably didn't listen to my entire set because I had a whole lot of different songs to tell you
Yeah.
about. Um, but again, I mean, you also have to accept that they're just an audience. They're not a critical listener. They're probably not a journalist or a musician.
Hmm.
So that's one thing you also have to understand when you're taking feedback from someone. You need to understand what their
Hmm.
background is and how they may have listened to your music. That was one, and I think the other is when what I've learned to not appreciate as much is when musicians or rather journalists start comparing you side by side with another artist, especially when you're trying to be original. There was one incident when there was an article written about a song that I released, and they just outright compared me to try and having copied an artist who's really established. And it might have come from a good place where you're
Yeah.
you're trying to
Yeah.
say that this artist has good music, and is sort of beginning to sound like them. That may have come out in a good way. But truly, what you're just trying to say is this artist has an established sound, and you're just trying to sort of ride on their wave, which is not what original artists are trying to do mostly. So I think it's really important to sort of see beneath those layers, understand what the person is trying to say. But it's also, I feel it's very important for people to understand how they're putting things forward, how they're phrasing their sentences, and just trying to put their thoughts out there.
So rightfully said. Frizzell, when artists put so much of their heart and soul, when, whether it's a good book or a good film or a good song, artists in general do so much for the mental health of the society at large. Recently, we observed International World Mental Health Day. Uh, so on days, Frizzell, when things don't seem right for you, when on days when you are struggling to get up and motivate yourself, what do you do when things are not really going the way you want them to? I mean, how do you figure your mental space out in situations like that?
I wish I had the answer. I will definitely tell you when I do, but one thing that's helped me a lot is listening to the music that brings me comfort. Most often it's the same music that I've been listening to for a long time. Songs that I know for a fact will put a smile on my face or will calm me down. And I don't know if this is a narcissistic thing to say, but there's also one song from the EP called Maybe Tomorrow,
Yeah,
which I wrote when I was not at the best point in my life.
yeah,
And I sort of keep going back to it because there are days when I do feel the exact same feeling that I was going through when I wrote that song. And it's just something that I hold very close because I know it brings me comfort. Um, there are a lot of artists who I love and adore. I keep going back to them. And that's what I find myself doing most often. And when I'm not listening to music, I'm rewatching the same old shows again and again. Because again, it's a space of comfort and familiarity. And when I'm not doing either, I'm eating ice cream.
I think eating always works, for us. Only
Sure,
when the waistline starts expanding only is when it feels very, very
for sure,
scandalous.
for sure.
Well,
Ice cream
but
can never go wrong.
well, Frizzell, artists that I have spoken to, in the last couple of years, ever since I started going video with my interviews, so many of them have always mentioned Frizzell as their favorite artist. But if I may ask Frizzell, who are some of her favorite Indian independent music artists that she loves and she admires? Who would be some of the names that you'd pick?
Oh gosh, this is very hard to do. Um,
Come on, you just
I
mentioned
feel like
Sabachaki. It's a good start.
for sure. I think Tavashaki, Dhruv, Vishwanath, Pratik Uhad, I did love from the very start. But lately, I've had a huge obsession with Mali. Aditi Ramesh has a beautiful sound, very exotic sound almost. I love Kamakshi. I think she's a brilliant singer and a songwriter. So many more. I mean, I feel like I'm not doing justice to a lot of these singer-songwriters who are also coming up. Um, but if I had to, like handpick the very few, I feel like Mali's on top of my list for sure. I absolutely love and adore her music. Um, I think all of the women in the independent scene need so much more recognition because they're literally just building waves. They're doing great. So yeah.
Absolutely.
But for sure, I'm missing out so many names. Um,
Yeah. I can
I
say
don't
that
really comment
because
when this video comes up.
I can say that because it's like right now you are kind of okay. One, two, three. I mean, I feel I should have given you a little breather to have made your list before we
Yeah,
began filming.
you know what? There was a very similar incident where someone asked me, what are the 10 songs you would pick to live the rest of your life with? I was like, I need 10 days to decide.
I'm averse to that
Sorry.
question because I'm wondering if someone was to ask me, give me 5 songs that you would listen to, I'd be like, that's so unfair. I have a playlist for every mood. How do I pick out 5 songs and give you?
Yeah, so I'll tell you what. So when this video comes out, I'm gonna tag all of my favorite artists and say, hey, I wanted
Sorry
to
for
mention
missing you
you.
out.
Yeah,
Well,
but there are so many.
Well, Frizzell, to conclude this interview, I think something that we must definitely talk about is the website that you have begun, something which I feel is an initiative on your part to engage with Frizzell D'Souza fans across the globe. Do you want to tell us more about that website?
Yes, thank you so much for acknowledging it. This website had been in the works for over a year. It was something that we wanted to introduce the EP with as well. I'm going to credit Arvind with the idea because we wanted to set up a newsletter where we could connect with not just fans and listeners, but anyone that wanted to be a part of this journey and family. We wanted to have a closer connect. And putting out the website, I feel like was a visual representation of what I wanted to showcase myself as an artist and as a person. Just the entire look and feel of it is I feel like it's just me. And the website was a prelude to the EP, so that people understand not just what songs are coming out, but what are the stories behind these songs, so that people can get insights and early access, exclusive information to all of this. So I really wanted to like build a really small, tight knit community with people who are invested in the music, invested in the story. So that's where the website came from.
And surely, I think because algorithms have really ruined it, ruined the prospects for artists and for people who are making great content in general. I think a dedicated website will actually help people who only want to know about you come to that particular platform. Like often things get missed from the scroll from your news feed. So I guess a great website just helps in building yourself as a brand, right?
Yeah, it certainly it like acts as a portfolio for all of the work that you have done, for everyone that's been involved. I feel like it's a great, like a one-page landing stop for people to know what you're up to. So yeah, for sure. The algorithm, that's a whole nother conversation for us to talk about.
Yeah, it's a never-ending
Not
conversation.
let's not get into it. Let's not get into it. But for sure that this is how the website's helped a big big chunk.
Lastly, Frizzell, now that the Hills Know of You is out for everybody to hear, and of course, the feedback has been coming since then. What are the grand plans next?
Well, for starters, I would just like the music to reach people. More than anything else, I want people to listen and, if possible, relate in any way to the music. That's primary to me. But apart from just the EP, we've been trying to get my music played in other cities, come and perform, meet my audiences elsewhere. So that's what we're currently trying to work on. So
Yeah,
God willing, if it works out, I'll be in your city soon.
can't wait.
Let's
I
see.
think
Fingers crossed.
can't wait. I think once I even wrote about it on your one of your Instagram lives saying that, come to Mumbai, the show will be sold out. And you just responded very sweetly saying, rubbish, how can it be sold out? But I'm telling you, come to Mumbai and of course, I'll definitely meet you there. But I'm sure you will be performing to a packed house for sure. Thank you so much, Frizzell, for talking to me. And it's been amazing knowing you as an artist and you more importantly as a person. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on. Thank you for trying to understand me more than just as an artist. It's very sweet. I really appreciate what you do. So have a lovely time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.